Good morning on this Sunday, February 21st, and welcome to the Georgia Gang. Governor Kemp announces 4 state-run mass vaccination sites will open tomorrow across Georgia. Republicans introduce a massive bill aimed at tightening the rules around absentee and early voting. And Atlanta Mayor Keisha Lance Bottoms is telling basketball fans not to come to Atlanta for the NBA All-Star Game. Phil, Kathy, and Janelle are all here, and we welcome back Bobby Capel, who is filling in for Theron. The debate and discussion begin right now.
From the Fox 5 studios, the Georgia Gang starts now.
Finally, some good news when it comes to the coronavirus in Georgia. The state's hospitalization rate is down more than half compared to the peak last month. And for the past 2 weeks, the positivity rate is below 10% since the end of November. And Governor Kemp announced the state is opening up mass vaccination sites starting tomorrow.
I'm very excited about this opportunity. I think it's going to be a way that we can continue to move the needle.
Governor Kemp announced that starting next week, Georgia will get 198,000 vaccine doses. That's up from just about 120,000 per week when the vaccines first became available. For the first time, the state will open 4 mass vaccination sites across Georgia, and that's just a start.
But given this significant progress made over the last few weeks in vaccinating our current 1A plus population and the gradually increasing supply we are receiving from the federal government, the state and the Department of Public Health will be finalizing our plans for expanded vaccination criteria within the next 2 weeks.
And no doubt that will be welcome news for teachers. So far, Georgia has distributed 1.6 million doses of the vaccine. Kathy, I want to start with you first this week. It appears we have turned a corner in terms of the numbers of cases and hospitalizations, but also with the distribution of the vaccine.
Yeah, it's nice to hear that number go below 10%. It'd be even nicer if it was lower. So hopefully people will, keep it on, right? Keep wearing masks, keep distancing, and let's fight this thing together. I'm excited to see we're having these mass vaccine sites so that people have more access. One of the things I'd like to suggest, and I'm hoping somebody from the governor's office is listening, is, how can like a church register, say, 10 or 20 seniors that they could bring in a church bus and all get vaccinated at the same time. One of the things that we've got to really focus on is how do we reach those people who live far from one of these sites, or they're living alone and they don't have access to the internet, or it's just too hard. For those of us who want to be advocates for those people, how can we do this efficiently? I'm hoping that suggestion will stick somewhere and that we'll get an answer.
And Phil, no doubt the state got off to a slow start, but this is obviously the priority for the governor and his staff. And he's also focusing on some of the minority communities that perhaps, we haven't seen the numbers of vaccines that we've seen in other places.
Well, I think these are all good points, and I think Kathy made a good point about, especially in our rural areas of Georgia, how we can get people, say, that are 65 and over to get vaccinated. So I think that's a great priority to be working on for the governor and his Kathleen Toomey with the Department of Public Health. And of course, you talked about a little earlier the mass vaccination sites. I'm glad those are being planned too. And maybe we're turning the corner, Lori, to your point about cases being down and hospitalizations down. Maybe we're seeing this herd immunity that we always have talked about. Maybe that's going to be kicking in. Fingers crossed.
Absolutely. That's why I wanted to lead with the story, because we don't often always hear about the good news when it comes to COVID-19. But we have a lot of news to get to this week. So I do want to switch gears, and I want to get all of your thoughts on this sweeping elections reform bill. It was introduced by Republican State Rep Barry Fleming, and there's a lot in it. It limits early and absentee voting. It requires photo ID for absentee voting, which we've seen in other bills. Also, drop boxes would be limited to early voting sites, and those hours also limited. Bobby, your thoughts on all of this?
I'm just completely unclear why we would start pulling back opportunities to make it easier for folks to vote. This is kind of a standard GOP playbook. If you can't win an election, legislate your way out so that the voters that you do not have supporting you don't show up at the polls, or make it very, very difficult for them to do it. Make them stand in really long lines, limiting early voting hours, limiting the absentee ballots. We are still in the middle of a pandemic. Gosh, I hope we are not in 2022 by the time these things are really needed. I mean, there's going to be city elections in 2021 as well. But I just think this is critically important that we don't go backwards and that we continue to move forwards. You cannot. The voters are supposed to pick the representatives, not the representatives picking the voters.
Janelle, I'm interested in your thoughts too, because President Trump's supporters have said all along the system needs to change because there's fraud. Trump's critics have said there's no proof of fraud and the election was not stolen from him. So with these massive changes proposed to the system, did President Trump have a point?
So I think yes, I do think he had a point to answer that question. But beyond that, whether, President Trump wants it or the critics don't, again, I can't stop stressing this point, that it's about making sure that the election process is done in a way that has integrity. So when I hear, Bobby say things like we're making it easier or not making it easier for people to vote, no, we're making it difficult for people to cheat. So whenever you have relaxed policies and laws as it relates to voting, you open yourself up to election fraud, election irregularities, which everyone on this panel has admitted that they know that there's some level of election irregularities that have taken place over the course of elections, period, not just in 2020. So this is a process that's tightening up. And, I have to make a note that I do get very, very insulted when I hear people make the claim that, if you're black or if you're poor, that you're unable to abide by these laws, as if these laws are strategically working against poor people or against minorities in general. That's not the case. I mean, we had Joe Biden make a statement that, black people are unable to get online. That's foolish. And I think that we have to continue to attack those narratives and make it seem like this is voter suppression. It's not voter suppression. It's called making sure that these policies are in place so people feel, and everybody, Democrat, Republican, Independent, Libertarian, so that all of you feel that your vote counts, that it matters, and is being done in a way that ensures that we have integrity.
Well, I knew we needed time for this one because I know this is an issue that fires everybody on this panel up. Kathy, over to you. Your response.
Yeah, I got a lot of things. First, last week I said I would check into these allegations of 8,000 cases of voter fraud. To date, the state election board has referred 59 cases to the Attorney General, and they range from improperly voting to giving people water in line when they're not supposed to. So it's not any indication of widespread fraud. Secondly, this House Bill 531, 48 pages of voter changes that got introduced last night at 4 p.m. To date, as we're taping this, I can't pull this bill up online because the General Assembly site is down and it was never posted. So the hearing happened on Friday morning at 9:30. So Thursday night at 4, you get the bill. You can't get it if you're a citizen, and you have to show up at the Capitol on Friday morning at 9:30 to be able to testify. No Democrats were consulted in the drafting of this bill. And so from the start, people are not going to trust what's going on that are concerned about voter suppression. I'll go on, but I'll cut it now because I'm sure I'm going to run out of time.
Yes.
But we have to start with a process that says we're bipartisan and that people are working together to correct changes. I'm not seeing the problems, and I don't understand why we got 48 pages of corrections.
Phil, over to you because you brought up that 8,000 number last week.
Absolutely, and Kathy and I are never going to agree on the extent of voter fraud, and I'm going to be very critical of the Secretary of State's office as well as the Attorney General's office, because there are far more cases that could be prosecuted, and I'll leave it at that for this week. But secondly, I just hate that my liberal friend Bobby is confused about voter ID. What's wrong with having, for example, the photo ID, which is one of the big bills that are being proposed for absentee ballots? And also, let's check the chain of custody, which was broken. Even Democrats and Republicans have been discussing about those notorious voter boxes. They would be restricted under some of these the legislation that we're talking about. And so I think it's just it's just basic, as Janelle said. There's fraud here. Laura, you remember when with Fulton County, we used to have late voting. We used to have all sorts of shenanigans. It's been going on in Fulton and DeKalb and other counties for years. This is something that has to be addressed.
Shenanigans, I don't know. I mean, I know that we've always been waiting on Fulton County elections results. But Bobby, 20 seconds over to you, because you know how it is with TV time.
Well, Phil, I'll just say this. This is a solution in search of a problem, unless your name is Donald Trump. There was no problem with this election other than the fact that your candidate lost. And that's okay. Everybody loses elections. We move forward. We move on. That's that.
And we're moving on. Thanks, everybody. Coming up, does Fulton County's elections director have a job or not? We'll discuss the confusing actions by the Fulton County officials next.
Have a question or comment for the Georgia Gang? Email them at georgiagang@foxtv.com.
The future of Fulton County Elections Director Richard Barron is still up in the air. The Fulton County Board of Elections voted to fire him this week, but the question remains whether the Fulton County Commission must sign off on that action. There was a tie vote there. Janelle, we'll start with you because this has been a confusing process.
Yeah, so I actually watched the special call meeting with the Fulton County Election Board, and many of the allegations that were made, or I would say, I don't even know if we can call them allegations, but many of the statements that were made about the director dates back prior to the 2020 election. And so I do believe that they made the right decision moving forward. As it relates to the commission, I personally don't think that the commission should have the final authority over this because it kind of will nullify the purpose of even having a Fulton County election board. But we all are all watching it. I think it's important to note that going forward, we have to be mindful of those who are working closely with these people, So I know the election board work closely with the director, and there's a lot of things that were said in that meeting. I encourage people to go watch it. But I personally hope that the commission, if they are involved, that they side with the results of the election board.
Bobby, we know there were problems previously and most recently in June with the huge lines, but I mean, you have to say that the election ran relatively smoothly for the most part in Fulton County in November. So does this all come down to timing?
I think so. I mean, I've not been a big fan of the Fulton County elections situation for many years. They've been so slow for years in just reporting results on election night and tabulating. I think some of that could be getting fixed with some of the work that's being done in the state legislature, which we'll be touching on later, I'm sure. But yeah, the thing that happened in June of last year was ridiculous. It does seem that they had learned some of their lessons because November went pretty smoothly. So when you're tracking down a better course, I would think you'd want to continue down that road and see where it leads. I'm a little surprised that there's been so much angst within the board and the commission rather about how to handle this. The fact that this is spilled out in the public like this, will they fire him, will they not fire him? It just looks very messy and it doesn't look good on the commission.
Yeah, I want to move on because I want to talk about the future of the Republican Party here in Georgia. Phil, Senator David Perdue possibly eyeing a challenge to Senator Raphael Warnock next year. Your thoughts?
Yes, these are exciting times for Georgia Republicans. In fact, you can bet that former President Donald Trump will be highly active in the 2022 partisan primary. In fact, my sources tell me that just this past week, David Perdue was talking with former President Trump about planning, and I think you'll be hearing some things soon about that. I think he's trying to clear the field for a run against Democrat Senator Raphael Warnock, who, believe it or not, a lot of people don't know this, but he's up for re-election again in 2 years, So I also think you're going to be hearing from Doug Collins, the former congressman. He came in third in that special election for U.S. Senate. He's mulling over what is he going to do. There's speculation maybe he'd like to go against Brian Kemp for the Republican primary in 2022. And you can be sure that Trump would be egging on Doug Collins or somebody else. And I think that Brad Raffensperger, the Secretary of State, is political toast. I don't know if he wants to run again, but already I'm having calls of people who are thinking of running. So stay tuned.
Kathy? Phil says these are exciting times for Republicans. What do you say?
Yeah, that's exciting times for Democrats to see the Republican Party in such disarray. We're having a good time, finally. So that's all right. Let me just say this about Raffensperger. Yeah, he's going to have people running against him left, right, and center, but he's still the most popular Republican in Georgia. That says a lot. You're seeing things play out down at the General Assembly as factions are splitting and knifing each other, and everybody's trying to figure out who's going to run against who. That'll play out for the next 2 years while voter suppression abounds. So I think, as it has been with Georgia in the last year or so, we are just going to be voting, and watching our state remake itself pretty significantly in 2022.
Janelle, Phil mentioned, former Congressman Doug Collins. He's saying that he's looking at possibly going against Governor Kemp in a Republican primary, or perhaps also a Senate run. What do you think about him entering these races, possibly?
Well, I don't think anyone is surprised that he is considering running again, given President Trump did make a lot of statements during the rallies about him running in 2022. So I'm actually just anxious to see which race he chooses, and we'll just have to stay tuned.
Bobby, does this make it easier for Democrats if Republicans are this divided come next year?
Oh, absolutely. The absolute best thing that can happen to Georgia Democrats is that the Republican Party here in the state decides to listen to Donald Trump's wing of the party again. Please go ahead. The definition of insanity is doing the same thing over and over and over again and expecting different results. Donald Trump just got beat in November, and he just got beat twice again in January in those 2 Senate runoff races. If David Perdue wants to jump back in and play the radical liberal Raphael Warnock game that Kelly Loeffler tried to play and failed miserably at, I'm sure Reverend Warnock's camp is saying have at it, because they will beat him again, this time by a couple of points.
All right, we'll leave it there. Thanks, everybody. Coming up, Governor Brian Kemp announces his plan to rewrite the citizens arrest law. We'll discuss straight ahead.
Join the discussion on the Georgia Gang Facebook page and watch past episodes on the Georgia Gang YouTube channel.
We learned new details this week of the governor's plan to rewrite the citizens arrest law. Janelle, we discussed some of this last week before we knew the governor's official plans. Your thoughts on what the bill says?
Yes, so I'm okay with the bill. I actually like how it's carved out as it relates to, who will be exempt. But I will say that I think that we need to, instead of having it where, citizens can arrest, I think there should be more of a detainment. I think that's where it gets a little confusing. Prime example, where we have, I know he said that he wants, police officers who are off duty to be able to arrest in areas that are not part of their jurisdiction. And I think that can create a lot of legal issues. So I think it's different if the officer can detain until a police officer who is within that jurisdiction comes and kind of takes over. But those are just small things. But I like it. I think it's a step in the right direction for sure.
Kathy, is it a step in the right direction? And in your eyes, as a Democrat, does this go far enough?
It is a step in the right direction, and no, it doesn't go far enough, and we've discussed this before. I think a corollary to this is a piece of the Stand Your Ground law that we changed, and it was changed around the country a number of years ago, that makes it so that you don't have a duty to retreat if you feel threatened. Obviously, if someone's in your home and you need to defend yourself, you need to do it. But you don't need to feel threatened because you don't like a black man running through your neighborhood and then you chase after them and gun them down. That's the piece we need to change as a corollary to this, because the two things go hand in hand. Whether you're arresting somebody as a citizen arrest or you feel threatened and you feel like you need to attack somebody, that's got to go.
I want to switch gears because there are a lot of firsts, during this COVID-19 pandemic. And here's another one. Mayor Keisha Lance Bottoms says basketball fans are not welcome here in Atlanta when the NBA All-Star Game happens here March 7th. Bobby, I want to ask you, will it be possible to keep fans away? I mean, bars and nightclubs, restaurants are all open for business.
Well, no, I don't think it's impossible. I think that's why she's making this public plea to ask people to respect the fact that we are in the middle of a pandemic right now, and we shouldn't be gathering in large groups of people until everybody's been vaccinated and we achieve the herd immunity that Phil was talking about earlier in the program. Look, I think one of the things that's been lost in Atlanta over this last year, just selfishly as a city, is we had the national championship and now the All-Star game. We had a lot of really cool sporting events that were supposed to be down in downtown Atlanta, and they have,
Oh, we had Bobby freeze.
Experiencing the joy of the.
Is Bobby freezing on us? Phil, I'll go over to you then, because Bobby was making a great point about how much the city of Atlanta has lost out on.
But it's still a horrible message that Mayor Keisha Lance Bottoms is giving. You're not welcome in Atlanta? What? I mean, what if you're a businessman, a hotel owner? What with the bars and restaurants? We can ease off of this lockdown that all too many of these Democratic mayors especially like. I think that you can have, with safety protocols, you can have bars, restaurants, hotels go about business. And I thought we were supposed to be reopening. I don't know why Bottoms has to give that message out.
Kathy, is this a good decision by the mayor? I mean, you were the Atlanta City Council president. What does she do here?
Well, I think I don't know what she's doing, but I think what she's trying to say is, we're not out of the woods yet. No, we're not opening back up, Phil. What we've got is, finally the numbers from the holidays dropping down and taking its natural course. So if we had this influx of visitors into Atlanta, number one, anybody who's traveling is probably feeling a little more secure than, maybe others who have to be cautious. And so what we don't want to do is see this be just another surge that puts us behind again. I'm not sure the announcement is going to do the job she wants it to do, and I think she's going to have to be prepared to communicate with the hospitality industry here on how they can keep control over crowds that might show up at their doorstep.
And real quickly, we're about out of time, but Phil, I just want to mention big news out of Fulton County this week. District Attorney Dick Donovan indicted on 4 felony counts, all of these stemming from his alleged relationship with one of the women who worked in his office. Phil, your thoughts on that?
That was a shocker. That was a real shocker to hear about Fulton County's DA. I think if you're going to award him a floating boat, like I always do in James Magazine, his boat is sinking.
All right, we'll leave it there. Thanks, everybody. Coming up, we'll have winners and losers. Stay tuned.
Time now for the week's winners and losers.
Bobby, I'm sorry you froze up on us earlier in the show, but you're my winner because you were out in the cold because of your dedication to the Georgia gang. We thank you.
Well, it is indicative of the cold that I froze up out here, so hopefully we won't do it again. I've got a little space heater at my feet here, which you can't see, and I'm very grateful for. Okay, my winners for this week is State Senator Jen Jordan, who is part of a bill who is trying to get election results processed that are absentee ballots and early voting ballots in the days leading up to the actual election day, so we can at least get some of those in the can, and we can hopefully start to get results out faster on election night. I think it's extremely important, and it will stop some of the disinformation campaigns that we saw in the general election in November, where Donald Trump claimed, I won election night, and then as the actual votes started to count, he lost and he couldn't deal with it. So anyways, that's my winner, State Senator Jen Jordan. My loser, I'm going out of state. I apologize, but I got to do it. Senator Ted Cruz going to Cancun in the middle of a huge crisis in Texas, and he didn't have some long-planned vacation to Cancun. He decided on the day of the crisis, he's like, yeah, it's a little cold here. Let's get the family out to Cancun instead of staying with his state.
All right, Janelle, over to you.
Okay, I want to give a special shout out to new friends that I met, Mark and Joy Fowler. Kelvin and I were invited to their home for a Valentine's Day party, and it was so good. We met so many amazing people, and she gave us an amazing lip balm as a parting gift, so I have to shout that out. And then happy belated birthday to one of my best friends, Melinda Coker. And then I want to encourage our legislators to please do the right thing when it comes to this election reform. It's no longer up for debate. I think it's a necessity at this point, so, and it's something that would benefit all voters. So I just want to make sure I encourage our legislators.
All right, Phil, we got about 2 minutes, so we're doing well.
Well, I want to make my winner the late, great Rush Limbaugh, the conservative talk radio king, and he certainly had the last laugh on when he was getting his start in Kansas City. Some idiot told him at the station, said, "Rush, we love you, but you'll never make it in radio." So also, I've got some winners that love the Georgia gang. I have got a security shift supervisor over at the Galleria complex where I work. It's Bruce Thompson. He's an Army vet like me. He loves all of us on the show here. I don't know if he likes Bobby, but I'll check on that. And also Asila over in Morrow, Georgia. She's at the Olive Garden, and she is a great professional server over there. And by the way, Dick Williams, Laura, used to say this, but the pitchers and catchers have already reported for Atlanta Braves spring training, and the rest of the team will be showing up soon. They're all winners, hopefully.
That's great. I'm glad you're keeping that tradition going, Phil. Thanks. And Kathy.
Yes, my winners this week are Georgia Public Broadcasting for the Black Church series that's currently airing. Check it out. It's really good. And also lawyer Tawanda Lord from Kilpatrick Stockton. She just got nominated for a 2021 Leadership and Corporate Citizenship Award. We're real proud of her. And then my loser are Georgia citizens on these voting bills. There's over 50 bills being voted. They're being rushed through, but a 48-page bill that gets heard overnight without citizen access to the discussion means basically things are getting wrapped up, tied in a bow, and getting rushed through without really due consideration.
All right, thanks everybody. My winner is one of my colleagues who I work with at Lexicon Strategies, Malika Rivers. She has just wrapped up this in-depth report with folks at Georgia Tech, some experts on community improvement districts and urban revitalization and the impact that these community improvement districts have. So congratulations to her, CIDreport.com if you want to check it out. Thanks everybody, we'll see you next week.